Hello everyone. Warm welcome to Ulvili, a weekly series hosted by vegans. Here they share the stories of how and why they became vegans, and in the process, how their relationship, the way they see the world, has changed. The word Ulvili is a Malayalam word and it means a call from within or the calling. So, through this series, we help people find out their calling of why they are doing what they are doing. Okay, so this series is hosted by Kerala Vegan Movement and Sthala. Sthala is passionate about building communities for social change. It brings like minded people together, helps them share, learn, engage, and grow as a community. Hi, I'm Drishti, and I'm vegan since last 2.5 years. And I was working as HR 8 years ago. Now I want to do something of my own. I have two kids, age 4 and 7, and I'm raising them vegan since February 2020. So for today's session, as usual, kindly keep your mic muted during the session. And if you have any questions, unmute and ask, or you can type your questions in the chat box. And now moving on with the introduction of today's speaker. Uh, Today's speaker, we have Darshna. Hi, Darshna. Yeah, you're muted. Yeah. So Darshna,
Hi everyone.
hello. Yeah, Darshna is an avid animal rights grassroots activist. And I would like to say that Darshna had a fracture and
It's okay.
she had a surgery today morning. In spite of that, she has agreed to join us, and it is so wonderful of you, Darshna. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. Well, my arm is in plaster
Oh,
and yeah,
okay,
so it is a bit painful but tolerable. Yeah.
okay,
So
yeah,
it's fine. Yeah.
okay. Thank you very much for
I didn't
joining,
want
and
to, yeah, postpone it because you put in so much effort and, planned on it and shared it on social media. I mean, I didn't want to just cancel it.
that's great. That's great, and wishing you a speedy recovery.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, I would like to say a few words about Darshna. Darshna was nominated and elected as the first coordinator of PFAPO, which is Pune Federation of Animal Protection Organization, an initiative of FIAPO. She then moved on to becoming a leader for FIAPO, Living Free Campaign, a campaign for farmed animals, taking initiative of holding regular outreach events, awareness programs in schools and colleges, vegan master chef challenges in institutes of hotel management, and co-organized 3 vegan fests in prominent mall in Pune city. She has also motivated and inspired more vegans to take up activism through her live videos on social media called Morning Walk Talks. At present, she is India campaign manager for $1 Million Vegan. Welcome to the show once again. And we would like to hear from you your story, like how you became vegan.
Thank you so much, Drishti. It was a wonderful introduction. And I really thank Sthala and Ulvidi for doing this because I think taking our stories to people makes it more real for everybody and makes them realize that we are all on the same boat, in the same boat, and all of us need some kind of trigger to awaken us to who we really are. So let me begin by saying I was a non-vegetarian like many other people. Not because I chose to be, but because I was born in a non-vegetarian family. In fact, when I ask people, when I meet them, I say, are you vegetarian or non-vegetarian? They respond, either vegetarian or non-vegetarian. When I ask them why, the answer is because I was born in a non-vegetarian family or a vegetarian family. So we are never given the opportunity to choose our food choices, to make choices based on who we really are. So basically, we are taught, as children, we are taught, we should look after cats and dogs and fight for dolphins and tigers, and then go home and eat chicken and mutton and fish and eggs and milk and butter and cheese and, everything. We are also taught about Gaumata, and we are taught to respect her, but none of us, most of us, do not know what actually happens to them behind the scenes. So this is like a cover up for what we believe and what really happens. They're actually two different things, totally two different things. So I was not vegan, and a friend of mine once told me, "Oh, you love dogs and you eat chicken." And I was like, "Of course I'm going to eat chicken. I'm not going to stop eating chicken. Everybody eats chicken." And I thought he was weird and he was being like, what's wrong with him, And this was just after a meeting we had to think about how we can improve the situation of stray dogs. And I didn't realize what a truth bomb I had set in that second. I had said, everybody eats chicken. And I didn't realize that I ate chicken because everybody ate chicken. I would eat dog meat if everybody ate dog meat. I would eat lizards if everybody ate lizards. So as a child, I don't think I ever decided one day that, okay, I'm going to, take this chicken and eat its flesh. In fact, nobody explained it to me that way. If as a child, when I was able to comprehend what about pain and life and suffering and death, if somebody had come to me and said, okay, this is a 40-day-old baby chicken, which is actually the size of an adult chicken, made to grow very fast, but it's a 40-day-old baby, we are going to kill it, remove the skin, the feathers, everything, and give you the flesh. We're going to cook the flesh and give it to you to eat. I doubt very much that I would have accepted it. I would have probably held on to the chicken, hugged it, and tried to protect it and keep it safe. Because instinctively, I don't think I would hurt an animal intentionally. And I thought I was a compassionate person because I used to take care of cats and dogs and, look after them. But at the same time, I was feeding them chicken and fish and eggs and, things like that, milk. But basically, I thought I was a compassionate person. I never thought I was being wicked or cruel or, intentionally doing some harm to some living being. So basically, whatever it is that we do is not our choice. We are never given the opportunity to understand what it is and then choose to be a part of this system. Now, if you look at it, our food system is a very violent food system. If somebody has to take the life of a chicken, especially non-vegetarians, when I ask them, even me for that matter, when I was a non-vegetarian, I had a catering business where I used to buy 10 or 20 chickens every day. But I used to tell the chicken shop guy, cut it and keep it. Don't cut them in front of me. I didn't want to see the violence. I didn't want to see the suffering. But it was okay because that was accepted. And I even remember telling the chicken fellow, "Arey, be careful, don't hurt that animal, hold it gently." I mean, how ridiculous is that? I'm telling him to kill the chicken, but to take care of the chicken, not hurt the chicken. And this is the cognitive dissonance that we grow up with. And I still remember that in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to see this suffering, but yes, I'll eat it, or I'll cook it and I'll sell it. It was the same thing with crabs. As a child, we used to bring crabs and we used to eat crabs. I remember the lady who used to clean the crabs, she used to break them alive, break their stomachs open alive. And I would feel horrible and move away, run away from there. But when it came to the table, I would say, okay, I want that piece and I want that piece. So we are so disassociated with our own selves. And it could also be because I didn't have the self-esteem or the confidence of being who I actually was. Maybe if I had grown up where I was allowed to be who I was, I would probably have stood my ground and said no. I wouldn't have probably bought chicken or mutton or fish. I have seen a butcher playing with the goat and then killing the goat. And it was like, how can this be possible, you know? And this was when I was a non-vegetarian. And yet I would buy that same flesh. So basically, I think not everybody has that strong conviction of being who they are, because I know there are quite a few people who have been to the butcher shop, seen the slaughter, and then stopped eating non-veg. So basically, we are aware of the violence, we are aware of the suffering, we are aware of the pain, but we continue to be part of that system. It is a system that has been in place for ages and ages and ages. So this is societal conditioning. Basically, society conditions us, you know, to do things like recently there was a discussion on Facebook about how to stop spitting. And some people said, let us take videos of these people and along with the corporation, make it public and shame these people. And I said, you know what, if we were in their place, we would be spitting too. Because they don't spit as something conscious. They don't do it consciously. They do it because their elders did it, their neighbors did it, everybody around them does it. And they don't realize that it is something they should not do. In fact, I've asked my maids and I said, why do you spit? And they say, oh, when there's dirt, I spit. And I said, but I don't spit. You know, and it makes them think. So I don't think it's right to shame and blame people because they are not bad people. And whenever I meet people, I ask them, you know, if they would intentionally hurt an animal. And they say no. I ask them if they would be able to kill an animal. And they say no. Most of them, some of them have killed. I'll talk about that as well. So when they say no, I tell them that they are really compassionate people. They are really nice people. And this is very important for us to validate because people are compassionate. It's not that I'm, you know, trying to flatter them, but it is the fact. It is a fact and it is the truth. They are compassionate because they would not kill. They would not hurt an animal intentionally. Most people, I don't say everybody, but most people, I would say 90 to 95% people are really nice people. So when I tell them that, you know, they are really nice people, they are wonderful people, and they can take the power back, because what happens is society takes control of our minds and our hearts. And we do things that are so not in alignment with who we are or our core values of compassion, peace, and justice. So we need to take that power back from society. Now, this takes a lot of courage. Why? Because eating animals is a dominant ideology. You know, it's happening all over the world. Drinking milk is a dominant ideology. And it's invisible. It's an invisible belief system. And because it's the majority of people who are doing it, when you step out of that system, you become the weird one. You become that queer one. What's wrong with you? You know? In fact, I remember when I first said I didn't want to eat animals, I started laughing because I was well known for my biryanis and tomato eggs. And, you know, when any guest came, the thing was, oh, chicken biryani or mutton biryani or chicken curry, mutton curry. We had to have that. Otherwise, we weren't being hospitable. So, you know, it's been glamorized for us. And that values of, you know, these are superficial values. That, okay, if you want to be hospitable, you should have animal products on your table. These are values we are ingrained with. These are not our values. So basically, we do not do what we really are. We just follow the flow. it's like herd mentality. And I know that so many vegetarians start eating non-veg outside. Why? Because all their friends are eating animals and it's glorified. And it's like, oh, how can you not want to eat this? Just taste it. It's so delicious. And there's no denying it that it is delicious. Instead, why can't the vegetarians be strong enough and say, you know what? I need you to not eat animals today. We're going out. Let's all be vegetarian for once. But vegetarians are the minority, so they don't have the power. So when we step out of the system, we are actually saying no to violence, we are saying no to suffering, we are saying no to pain, and we are living our core values of compassion, peace, and justice. Now, just imagine, we are not ready to hurt an animal intentionally, yes? But we pay somebody to do that. Now, what kind of person can actually take the life of another animal? Think about it. He has to turn his heart and mind off. If he leaves those things open, do you think he'll be able to cut the neck of a chicken or a goat or even pull fish out of water? I don't think so. So we literally make monsters out of people. We tell them, you don't have a right to feel. You don't have a right to be who you are. And that's something very lowly to do. And if you see, it's in many countries, you know who does the butchering? It's people who have no choice. They have no choice. They don't have any other jobs. In the US, it's immigrants who don't have a legal authority to live in the country, and they are made to do all these jobs, and they are paid horrible wages. Now in India, I have visited many dairies, and I see people living in pathetic conditions. Many of them leave their families in the villages. They come and live in the cow shed. They don't have proper homes. They don't have proper rooms. Or even if they do, they have pathetic, small, horrible rooms. And the stink of the cow dung, the urine, the cows, it's all over. And they smell it. They themselves stink. So this is really sad because we don't even think about the humans involved in these industries. And this is actually a human rights issue. It is a human rights issue. I mean, how can anybody be forced to do something like that? Many of these butchers, when I've spoken to them, I've asked them how long they've been doing the job and when they started. And one of them I asked, and he said, I said, how did you feel the first time, you know, when you wanted to kill a chicken? He said, I was nervous, my hands were shaking, and I couldn't sleep that night. And I said, now? He said, now it's okay. But if you want to chop a tomato or a pumpkin or anything, nobody says anything. I mean, it's okay. It's so easy to cut the vegetables. In fact, if you go to a vegetable shop, they will cut the pumpkin right in front of you. But you go to a chicken shop or a goat shop, it's covered. Why? If it's not violent, if it is not gruesome, why are you covering it? Why shouldn't we see it just the same way that we see vegetables being cut? But people don't want to see the violence. People don't want to see the suffering. People don't want to see death. And this is something we really need to think about, you know. It's societal conditioning again. And, you know, they say, don't take a child to a slaughterhouse, but yes, take him to a farm where you grow, or, you know, fruits and vegetables. Let's have a picnic. Nobody will have a picnic in a slaughterhouse, but they'll have a picnic in a field, green field, where they have lots of vegetables and fruits and maybe even wheat or other grains or nuts and seeds. So these are things that should give us signals, should, you know, help us understand what it is that we do. So the thing is, I'll answer your question, Ananya. That's a great question. So the thing is, we need to wake up people. And we have to make sure that they understand that we understand who they are, because I was just like them. Most of us were like them, you know. So what we need to do is to validate their compassion, validate the good nature that they have, validate that they are really nice and wonderful people. I remember once when, because when I do this, I ask, you know, when does any animal produce milk, whether it's a rat, cat, horse, dog, donkey, human being, elephant, cow, buffalo, whatever. And they say after they have a baby. So I say, why has nature put milk in the body of that mother? They say to food, you know, for the baby. And I say, yes, it's meant, it's nutrition for a newborn baby to grow fast in a short period of time. And then I say, when we take milk from a cow or buffalo, what are we doing? And they say, yeah, we are stealing the food of a baby. I say, yeah, it's the nutrition. It is so essential for that baby. It is the nutritional need of that baby that we are taking away. We are taking away the birthright to mother's milk. And then I say, would you do something like this? Isn't it horrible? And they say, no, we wouldn't do it. And then they say, okay. I say, why do you do it then? They say, oh, because we need calcium, we need, you know, it's tasty. I say, no, that's not the reason. What is the reason? They're wonderful people. They're compassionate people. I make sure to tell them that they are compassionate, they are wonderful, and they think it is an injustice to do such a horrible thing, right? I make sure to tell them this. And then when I tell them, it's not because of taste or calcium, it's because everybody is doing it. It seriously is because everybody is doing it. So once I remember, I didn't validate their feelings. I didn't tell them that they were good and compassionate and nice people and that, you know, they thought this was an injustice. And the conversation dragged on and on. It became an argument. And where I ended up trying to prove myself right and they tried to prove themselves right. And that doesn't help. So what we really need to understand is people are compassionate and they need to be told that they are compassionate. So that is very important. So Ananya's question was, what do you do when people, what was her question? Shall I take the question?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah.
How to, yeah.
Respond?
Yeah, she's saying how to respond to people who doesn't want to see the violence but want to eat animals. They don't listen and they always start arguing.
Yeah. So basically they start arguing because we have not validated them. And when you start a conversation with people, we have to tell them that we understand that they are nice people. So if we tell people, see, you don't want to see the violence, but you want to eat, what are we doing? We are making them out to be bad people. Nobody likes to be told that they are bad people because, see, honestly, most people are not bad. Or if they are bad, they are good as well. Nobody wants to think of themselves as bad people. So when you say, oh, you don't want to see the violence, but you want to eat animals, that makes you a bad person, isn't it? So this is where the crux of the matter is. When you talk to people, make sure you tell them that, you know, we understand that you're a nice person and you're compassionate. Just recently, I met a dog lover and she came out of her way to do something for a dog in my area. And I was like, wow. So I said, have you gone vegan yet? And she said, no, that's a personal choice. You know, everybody makes their own choices. Now, she wanted to leave. She didn't want to stay and she didn't want to listen to what I had to say. I said, you know what? But because of what you did, the action that you took, coming here all the way for this dog, I know you're a really compassionate person and you wouldn't hurt an animal intentionally. And that tells me you'll go vegan very soon. I just told her that. I have no idea if she's gone vegan or not, but she said, yeah, I am compassionate. She said that. So when you point out that people are compassionate and they wouldn't hurt animals intentionally, you are not telling them they are bad people. So it's very important not to understand who we are and what kind of thoughts we have about ourselves or what people have about themselves, right?
Yes. So like when we argue, like when we talk to people, they often come up with this question that in our Hindu mythology or all our gods, and Krishna, mainly Krishna, he used to eat makhan and all. So like whether he was doing wrong that time,
Mhm.
and so God is doing this, so we are his followers. So what?
Mhm.
How do we
Yeah.
are? Yeah.
So first of all, I think when somebody says, you know what, Krishna did this, and I say, oh wow, that's really nice that you follow Krishna. It makes you, a kind person because he didn't eat meat and he was somebody very logical. But let's think of it this way. So you have to first validate them. Say that what he's doing by following Krishna is really good. And then you bring out the point, because see, Krishna never drank milk. All that we know is as a child, he stole butter. Now, Krishna was supposed to have 1,000 or 1,00,000 cows, and yet his mother had to hide the butter. What does that tell us? It tells us that though there were so many cows and buffaloes, or just cows, the babies had all the milk throughout the day. We don't have a single picture showing us that the baby is tied away from the mother. With Krishna, it is always the baby and the mother together, and the baby is drinking mother's milk. We don't have a single picture where the baby has been separated from the mother. Also, as an adult, we don't have any picture of him drinking milk as an adult. So basically, his mother had to hide the butter. That means it was a very valuable resource and it was not in plentiful. So they did not really exploit cows or buffaloes, right? Now, also think of it this way. Why are we worried about Krishna having butter? But we don't talk about him wearing a dhoti. Now, if we say, I eat butter because Krishna ate butter, then I should be wearing a dhoti because Krishna wore a dhoti. Also, I should have a lot of gopis around me and I should be flirting with all of them. And I should be stealing their clothes. Try doing that today. Do you think it would be acceptable? So why
Yeah.
only stick to one thing?
Mm.
Think about all the things that he did and do all of them. Then we'll
Yes.
see. And first of all, remember, he only stole butter. He had butter. We don't have him drinking milk. Not as an adult. So, okay, if you
Yeah.
were a child and you stole butter like Krishna, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. So we are like God has his own way to do things, and he does it with a purpose. Plus, he will never hurt any of the beings which he has created. So
Exactly.
that's a wonderful point. So, we have been think like you mentioned that the people who live in uh, who are in this animal industry, they live in very bad condition, and that is something, it's a human right violation, right? But still
Absolutely.
when we question people like in the fish industry or in the any other animal, so they will be said like, if you go vegan, what will happen to their livelihoods?
Yeah.
And so that's the question which happens. So how we can tackle that, like in addition to this very lowly kind of job, how do we answer them?
So, first of all, I would ask them, would you want to do such a job? Have you
Mhm.
seen the kind of life that they live?
Mhm.
Would you ever wish that job on yourself? If you are not ready to take up that job, why do you wish it on somebody else? Nobody grows up saying, oh, I want to become a butcher when I grow up. Nobody says, I want to milk cows when I grow up. Nobody
Mhm.
says, I want to kill fish when I grow up. Nobody wants that kind of job. Everybody says, I want to help. I want to become a doctor and help people. I want to become a policeman and help people. I want to become an engineer and build roads and, improve people's lives. Nobody says that I want to do something that is violent, that hurts others, and is something that I can do only by turning off my heart and mind. Why would you wish some job like this on anybody?
Mhm.
I mean, that is such a pathetic, horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think we need to say, you know what, that kind of livelihood is not respectful.
Mhm.
It is not dignified, and they need to switch. They need to switch from that horrible life of getting money, earning money from that kind of income. They need to switch to a job like maybe selling vegetables or whatever, making laddus and selling, or maybe becoming a shopkeeper somewhere. But I don't think that is a kind of job that we would wish on anybody. Secondly, when industries change, I remember when the automobile industry became automated, nobody worried about the jobs of thousands and thousands of people that lost their jobs. Or when the CD industry became a pen drive industry, or the pen drive industry is now almost gone, or whatever. I mean, when things change, nobody worries about the livelihood of these people. Why? Because new jobs will be created
Mhm.
automatically.
Yep.
So we don't really need to worry about that.
Yes. That's nice. Yeah. So,
Are
yes.
there
So,
any questions?
yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, Sony, are you there, Sony?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Darshana, hi. Thank you for coming in. I have a question. I'm a transitioning vegan, or rather a
Mhm.
vegetarian for now.
Okay.
This is my third month going on right now, and I find there is a lot of, I mean, there's very few choices of food that I can actually have right now. I
Mhm.
stay alone. I'm
Mhm.
in the Middle East, and this is a
Mhm.
place where everything is non-vegetarian.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the choices? What are some of the quick food choices that I have that I can actually depend on,
Mhm.
especially on the Indian food side?
Wonderful. Wonderful question. So how long have you been in the Middle East?
It's been about 9 months, 10 months now.
Okay. Okay. And what made you go vegan?
For me personally, it was to get my, for me, it was purely the health issue. So when
Okay.
I felt non-vegetarian was going on the higher side, cholesterol shot up, and
Mhm.
earlier I found vegetarian being good, and
Mhm.
then I happened to stumble upon the vegan aspect in
Mhm.
one of the other WhatsApp groups that I'm part of, and so I thought I'll give it a try, and
Wonderful.
so far it's been encouraging, and I'm still yet to be fully sold on the compassion aspect, because I
Okay.
have been a non-vegetarian for almost 40 years of my life.
Mhm.
So, but in addition to the mental aspect, on the compassion aspect, I'm also working on the health aspect.
Okay. Great. So, you know, we you know what, we tend to look at alternatives. Oh, if not dairy milk, then almond milk or hemp milk or soya milk or sesame milk or coconut milk. No, we don't need alternatives. Why do we drink milk? We need to understand that. We drink milk because we are supposed to get strong bones. We are supposed to get calcium and iron and protein from it, right? So, where else can you get these nutrients? Doesn't have to be a milk. Why almond milk? Eat the damn almonds. Soak them and eat them. You don't have to make it into milk and have it, right? So what we need is calcium, iron, proteins, and things like that. And you can get these from plant sources like fruits, vegetables, pulses, grains, legumes, and things like that. Now, our Indian food, if you look at it, roti, sabji, dal, chawal, kuchumbar, papad, chutney, pickle, this is a basic Indian meal, right? If you look at it, if you omit the ghee and the dahi, it's vegan.
Hmm.
So there's no dearth of dishes. Now, I don't know what is available in the Middle East, which part of the Middle East you're in, I don't know. But I'm sure there are hundreds of fruits. I know that in the Middle East, people eat a lot of fruit. It is part of their culture.
Right.
And that is also because they eat lots of meat, because they need to clean their system. And still they fall sick, obviously, because you can't be eating health on one side and poison from the other.
Right.
It's not going to sort out. So you just need to eat health. So eat your fruits, eat your legumes, eat your pulses. You can make rajma, you can make chole, you can make whatever other pulses are available. Cook it in the Indian style. I'm sure bread is available. So bread is usually vegan unless they put milk, basically, if they put milk or eggs in it. Those you avoid, but if you take the regular bread, it doesn't have any of these things. So there shouldn't be a question of, oh, now what do I eat? If you look around, if you go to the right store, the right shop, you'll see that there are hundreds of vegetables you can eat. So basically, we need to change our way of thinking. We need to understand that we don't need alternatives, that we can actually survive, and not only survive, thrive on food. Now, one thing I would suggest is you need to eat whole plant food. Now, what is whole? Whole means complete. Basically, if you eat coconut, you're eating the whole coconut. You grind it up or you make it into pieces and you eat it. But the minute you have coconut milk or you have coconut oil, what you have done is you've messed up with the coconut, removed the fiber, which is so important. Nature has put that fiber in there so that you don't end up eating too much fat, because coconut has a lot of fat.
Right.
So if you have it in the whole form, right, you won't be eating too much, you won't be getting too much fat, and you will feel full because the fiber makes you feel full. You can't eat more, you can't eat too much of a coconut, but you can have a lot of coconut milk.
So in other words, you're saying avoid processed food.
Absolutely,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
Or even if you buy fruits like cucumbers, or you buy kiwis, eat them with the skin on, because the nutrients are just below the skin. Carrots, don't peel them. Pumpkin, don't peel them. The nutrients are just below the skin. So what you really need to eat is food that is nutrient dense. When we remove the peel or we process, what we do is we get a lot of calories, but not enough nutrition. And that's going to make you feel hungry all the time. And also when you eat whole food, complete, it releases energy slowly. So you're going to feel full for a long period of time. You're not going to feel hungry all the time, like when you eat maida. So eat brown rice, eat instead of, white rice. Eat dates instead of sugar. Sugar is not food. It's processed so much, it doesn't look like sugar cane. You try eating sugar cane with your teeth. How much of it can you eat? There's so much fiber in it.
Absolutely.
Nature has put that fiber there for a purpose. So that tells you, oh, don't eat too much of it.
Sure,
So
thank you.
basically, do your research on whole food plant-based, WFPB.
Yeah,
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
Thank you, Soni. Thank you, Darshana.
You're
I think, Preeta, are you there? Hello, Preeta.
Yes, Drishti, I'm here.
Hi. Yeah, so Preeta is also a vegan activist, and she has been vegan since last 5 years now. And she is the main inspiration behind all the episodes of Ulvili which are happening. And
Wow.
so Preeta, there are some questions in chat box. Can we just have that?
Awesome, Preeta. This is such a
Yeah.
great initiative.
Oh, thank you so much, Darshana. Okay, we have a bunch of questions coming in.
Mhm.
Amrita is asking, Darshana, could you please share your experience of how the Indian vegan movement has been growing? There is so much positive news about exponential growth of veganism in UK, US, and other countries. It will feel all the more motivating to hear you talk about how it has been growing here in India since you started.
Okay. So I became vegan about 8 or 9 years ago when I watched Earthlings, because a friend kept telling me, oh, you need to watch Earthlings. And it took me 6 months. He had to tell me 2 or 3 times. And it was like, okay, finally, one day I went home and there was nobody at home. And I said, let me see what he keeps saying, Earthlings, Earthlings. And I sat and watched it. And my heart and mind went vegan overnight. I didn't even watch all of it because it was too painful. I still remember pacing, and I still remember, my just in tears rolling down my eyes. And I watched about 15 minutes, another 10 minutes without looking at the screen. And it was just heartbreaking. And I suddenly realized it was me, right? So I went vegan at that time. And then I said, there must be thousands of people like me who, you know, are not aware of the violence that they are involved in. And I took up activism. And I remember when we went out and spoke to people, we had to literally explain the word vegan. It was so difficult. And people were like, what, vegan? And at that time, I didn't speak the way I do now to people. I did not validate their kindness or compassion. I used to end up with long arguments, and very few people went vegan then because of my outreach. But I kept giving leaflets out. So I remember that almost nobody knew what veganism was. Today, when I step out, I say, you know what, this is about going vegan. I give the leaflet and I say, this is about going vegan. And nobody says, oh, what is vegan? So there's been a huge change, huge. It's been in the news, it's been on TV, it's been on social media. Social media has played a big role. The only thing is we don't have statistics. We don't know how many people there, how many vegans there are, but it's definitely growing. And there are a lot of people like, what was his name? Sony, right? Sony,
Yes,
who
yes.
are transitioning vegans. So they're ready to cut back. They've started and they haven't gone completely vegan yet. But there are many, many like him. And most people are now aware of what veganism is. Like when I lived in Vimannagar for almost 6-7 years, and towards the end, because I kept giving leaflets all the time. Towards the end, I had to ask, because every time I handed it out, they would say, oh, I've got it. So towards the end, I was like, have I given this to you before? And if they said, yes, I've got it, I used to ask, have you gone vegan? Now, if you see, the most number of vegans are, I would say, in Vimannagar. And that's why there was a vegan restaurant there. There are 2. So, of course, one closed down because of the conditions now. But basically, I think if we look at it, and that is why I say we need to do neighborhood outreach. So when I came here about 2 years ago, there were no vegans around. I met 2 vegans. By the way, I met 2 vegans who were already vegan, and that never used to happen before. But because I've been talking to people all the time, there are so many people who have either gone vegan or cut back and are on the groups that, I have the Living Free groups that I've added them to. So neighborhood veganism, I think, is very, very essential. We should step out. It doesn't take any extra time. Just talk to 1 or 2 people every time you step out. Simple. That's it. You don't need to wait for somebody else to, create or organize an event or an outreach to be able to go and talk to people. So yes, there's been tremendous growth, definitely, but no statistics, sadly.
Thank you, Darshana. You've been on such an amazing journey from the start till today. I mean, you've come such a long way.
I agree.
Okay, Devika has a question. This is about the common questions and arguments that vegans and vegetarians hear. So this one is about what do you tell people when they argue that when you dig out or pluck out vegetables or cereal plants, you are already killing hundreds of microbes. So it's not as non-violent as you think.
Right.
How do you...
So first of all, we need to understand that our agricultural system itself is faulty. If you go to a forest, nobody uses pesticides and fertilizers, and the forest thrives. But our food system, we will grow one plant over acres and acres of land. Obviously, it's going to get infected by pests, and then we use a pesticide, and then we use some fertilizer because the soil has been ruined. So first of all, let us understand that what we do with agriculture is also something really horrible. And we need to move to a system that is sustainable, like food forests. So we need to plant varieties of food, varieties of trees and crops in smaller amounts and build that ecosystem which is symbiotic, and you don't need any pesticides or fertilizers. So when you pluck from those, you are not harming any animals or insects or microbes, because you're not going to be killing any of them. That is one thing. The second thing is, I'm glad you think that, you know, we should not be harming microbes or insects. First of all, I doubt that they have any sentience, but despite that, you know, there are 7 billion human beings on Earth, 7.4 maybe. But do you know how many land animals raised for food there are? 74 billion. 10 times the number of humans. And what do they eat? They eat plants. Now, do you think 7 billion people would eat more plants than 74 billion animals? So basically, every time you eat an animal, you're killing more microbes, you're destroying more trees, plants, whatever. So if you really want to reduce the suffering, you need to go vegan. Simple. You just need to do the maths. It's so simple. And animals eat a lot more vegetables than humans ever would. Because for humans, you eat a little bit and that's enough. Animals need kilos and kilos of vegetables and other stuff throughout the day, because they're bigger. Even chickens, they need more than humans do, because they are babies, and all babies need more food than adults. Remember that, because they're growing. So water also, all resources, your land resources are being used to grow food for 74 billion animals. Imagine if that same land was used to grow food for 7 billion human beings. Half of it, more than half of it, would go back to forests, because we wouldn't need so much land or water. There wouldn't be water shortage either.
Thank you,
I hope
Darshana.
this answers.
You just gave us a vision of another world that's possible, where we are all surrounded by food forests.
Right.
And we're not
Absolutely.
destroying the planet anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that movement needs to grow faster.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're all here for, right?
Yes, absolutely. I hope it makes sense what I said.
Yes, and for most people, they don't really connect the dots and, you know, follow the process. Where does it all come from? And, you know.
Yeah, I started connecting the dots only after I went vegan, because I started questioning. You know, I started questioning everything. That's when I ended up with food forests. Or what happens to cows and buffaloes? When do they produce milk? I mean, this is something I thought myself, because I started learning how to question. And I think we should continue to question. There may be a lot of vegan food that is very questionable, whether it's really good for us, whether it's good for the planet. And we need to make a stand and take a stand and say, no, this is vegan, but this is not good. Like palm oil. Palm oil is destroying the habitat of orangutans, is the cause for deforestation. We need to take a stand and say, I'm not going to eat anything that has palm oil in it. So it may be vegan, but that doesn't make it something that we should support. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we need to go so much deeper into each choice that we are making, what lies behind it.
Yes, absolutely.
Neetu
we need to
has
question.
Yes. Neetu has a question for you. She's asking for your magic formula. What do you say to them that makes them change their mind?
See, Neetu, I think I've mentioned this earlier. Basically, I don't make them out to be bad people, because they are not. That is the truth. I'm just telling them the fact that they are really nice people, because they are. I'm not flattering them. Please be honest when you say that they are nice people. Say it to them. Say that you are a compassionate person, you are a kind person, and let them understand it is not their fault, because it isn't. It is the system's fault. It is the fault of the system we are indoctrinated into, even before we can comprehend what it is. You know, milk products, chicken products, egg products are put on our plates, on our mouths, even before we understand what it is. So the minute you tell them, you know what, you're a wonderful person and it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault, they get it. And they won't sit and argue with you. But you really need to validate that. that is the most important thing you need to tell them. Because suddenly they realize that you're not out there to make them bad people, sound like bad. Oh, you're killing animals and you're doing this some terrible thing. You're saying, you know what? We do it because everybody around the world is doing it, which is a fact. And we're born into it. We wouldn't choose to. There's one thing I would like to say, if as children we were taught that all beings are equal and that all beings should be respected equally, do you think we would have racism? When we grew up, do you think we would have sexism, casteism, classism, xenophobia, any kind of discrimination? Would there be discrimination? And would we be eating animals? But no, what are we taught? We are taught speciesism. We are taught to love and take care of certain animals and go kill and eat certain animals. This is what we are taught. It is not something who we are. It is not something that we choose to do. So speciesism is the root of all evil on earth. And this is something I understood when I watched Gary Yourofsky's talk about speciesism. He has a 2-minute talk. And I understood about the dominant ideology and the invisible belief system after I watched Melanie Joy's videos. She has a TED talk, and it just clicked. I said, shit, man, this is what it is. And why am I telling people, oh, look at the violence, look at this, look at the cruelty? Now I don't need to show them the cruelty at all. I can talk to them for 5 minutes and they get it because I have understood it. And that's when, after I watched her talk, that is when I changed my way of talking to people, because I realized people are nice and we need to tell them that they are nice people. They're not bad people because they're eating animals. No.
Thank you, Darshana. We all really need to try this from now onwards.
Yes, you should. You should. Yeah. I have quite a few videos on my YouTube channel. It's called Plant Powered Darshana. If you go to the morning walk talks or you go to different playlists, you'll see how I communicate with people and how they accept it. Of course, some don't, but mostly they do. Mostly they do. So
Darshana, I've watched your morning walk talks on Facebook, and how you approach each of your neighbors as you go along on your morning walk.
Right.
Like, so for example, like when you meet someone, when you see a neighbor who's buying milk, how do you talk to them?
Okay, that's a very good question. In fact, anybody. So I just wait for an opening to start the conversation. So like if somebody, is walking and they smile at my dog, I say, oh, you love dogs. And then I start the conversation. And then I say, did you have a dog? Or, I start the conversation. And then I ask, are you vegetarian or non-vegetarian? And I say, you know what, I'm an animal rights activist. And I tell them openly. And then I start about, would you kill an animal intentionally yourself? Would you hurt an animal? And I begin the conversation. Or somebody's buying milk. I say, you know what? Have you thought about what milk is? Do you have 2 minutes? Can I talk to you for 2 minutes? And then if they say yes, I say, okay. If they say no, I'm in a hurry, I say, no problem. That's fine. I never take anything personally. Remember, if somebody doesn't want to listen to you, you can't force them to listen. Okay. So, but most people say, yeah, sure. What is it? And then I say, have you thought about, how does any animal produce milk? When does any animal produce milk? And I have this question answer format, which I can share with all of you, and you can use that. I use the same questions. It is there also on my YouTube channel. So starting the conversation is very important. And most people, this is really bad, but a lot of people know me and they say, oh, I've seen you. And I say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know you. But because I meet people all the time, and it's really nice that they have noticed me. And I sometimes wear my t-shirts, and some people really look out and read it. So I wear my t-shirts on climate change. Stop climate change, go vegan. And then behind that is climatevegan.com. So on the back. So that also helps. If you wear vegan t-shirts, it can start a conversation, but generally people won't approach me probably because I'm a girl or an elderly woman. So, but it makes them think for sure. So starting the conversation, you just need an opening, and don't feel shy. That is the most difficult thing, you know. You just start and you say, you know what, oh, you live in my building, I know you live nearby. Anything to start the conversation, and then say, do you have 2 minutes? I'd like to, can you just share that question answer? Yes, I will definitely share it with Preetha and Drishti, and they can share it with you. So you just need to find an opening. Start a conversation with somebody you don't know. And maybe you can practice without doing outreach. Just practice how to meet somebody you don't know in your area, in your neighborhood, and become friends. Just try it. And then later you can use it to do your outreach.
Thank you, Darshana. I think, a lot of us are going to be doing things very differently.
I'm glad. I'm really glad.
We have a question from Deepak.
Darshana. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ananya. Yes, Preetha, tell me his question from
we
Deepak.
have a question from Deepak. He's asking, how do you fight big companies like Amul or Cadbury? That's it.
Okay, so that is a different kind of activism. And for that, you need a campaign. So what you need to do is, I haven't fought them as such, but we have had some campaigns, especially I think People Farm recently said, why don't you ask dairy companies what happens to cows after they stop producing a profitable amount of milk, and what happens to calves. So the minute you question them, now I tagged Amul in my video, they untagged themselves instantly. So then I added the hashtag. So basically these companies don't want to know, they don't want people to know what they do. So that kind of outreach or that kind of action needs planning and needs a sustained campaign. And we also need to make sure that we end up talking to them. So just, riling them up or making them upset doesn't help. We need to start the conversation. And I don't think that has really happened in India as such, but there are many people, many activists who point out the cruelty and tag Cadbury and tag Amul. But I think that is a very good strategy that activists should really seriously think about, because I think we are good enough in numbers to now take up these kind of campaigns.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if vegans are scattered across the country, but if we all come together and plan and organize, there's nothing that we can't do.
But somebody needs to take the lead. You need to have a core group, you need to have proper planning, you need to have proper strategy, and you need to have the capacity to mobilize people. Yes.
Darshana, Sumita,
it's a big industry. Deepak, we can have a conversation later about this if you want. I can. Everyone, yeah. You have to take leadership. That's important. Are you ready to take leadership?
Yeah, there is no problem. But can we fight this big giant?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, we need to disrupt them. We really need to disrupt what they're doing.
Because mainly they are dependent on their marketing strategy, and they provoke us. Amul Doodh Pita Hai India and something like that.
Yeah. So I think when Joaquin Phoenix said something against the dairy industry, Amul came back and put out a pathetic ad, and the whole community went against them. And I think it's time that we organize ourselves, and we can. We just need organizing. We need persistence. We need proper planning. It can't be done just like this. You need to have planning, and we need to have people to take responsibility for it. So let us plan.
Okay, fine.
Great.
Thank you, Darshana. Sumita has a question. She's asking, Darshana, why do you suggest speaking to people we don't know rather than known people?
Oh, that's such an important question, because most people will not listen to their relatives or family because we have so much baggage, you know. There is a question of ego. And it's true about us as well. If somebody we know tries and tells us that, oh, this is right and you should be doing this and this is wrong and don't do it, we'd like, oh, you shut up. I know better than you. So this is human nature. This is just human nature. So let's stick to strangers. It's more effective. And with relatives, what I have done is I just give bits of information. I don't do the whole outreach with them. Just bits of information. That's enough. We cannot convince them. But the minute they see somebody like Joaquin Phoenix, who has a lot of stature and a lot of presence in the world, and if he says something, then they'll go vegan like this. So let's not get into let's not waste time, you know, with friends and family. But don't give up. Keep pushing it. You never know what will trigger them.
Yeah.
Don't give the whole thing, just little bits every time. That's what I do.
Look for teachable moments, right?
Yeah, or just like if you see a post that you think is really, you know, it says something, just share it with them. So it's not coming from you, it's coming from somebody else.
Absolutely. Darshana, Sony has another question.
Yeah.
He's asking any online resources for meal prepping that doesn't involve refrigeration and cooking.
I'm not too sure, but the raw vegan community is something you should look into. And you know, if you just eat a lot of fruit and vegetables raw, you don't really need prepping, and you can just eat them as it is, unless you want to make them fancy and more delicious by combining them. So a lot of sprouting, a lot of soaking. Like if you soak peanuts overnight and have them the next morning, just taste them. They're so delicious. But nobody tells us, oh, soak peanuts and have them. Nobody tells us. But you can add them to chop some cucumbers and things like that. So you need to, I think, explore more in the raw vegan side, raw vegans. I'm sure you'll find something. And I have written a cookbook only with traditional Indian food. And that's a Google site, which I'm converting to a website now. So I have already transferred about 36 recipes. Once I do 100, I'll share that. And it's about traditional Indian food, only traditional Indian food. So if you cook those dishes, they're delicious. I don't think then you should really need about prepping and refrigerating and all that. Roti, sabji, dal, chawal, papad, chutney, pickle, cucumber. Stick to that.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
No,
Darshana.
cucumber is raw. Cucumber is raw. Cucumber means salad. Pickle is already, you know, preserved. It's in oil though, so not very healthy. But you do have your raw pickles or instant pickles, which don't need oil. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Darshana, Ananya has another question. Let me just briefly introduce Ananya to you. She's a 13-year-old vegan activist from Surat.
Wow.
And
Brilliant.
every single night, she and her parents go out and feed the stray dogs in their city.
Wow.
And she was telling me that because people don't allow them to feed the dogs, they go out for the feeding at midnight so that they're not disturbed by people. So
Oh.
that is what her question is about. She's asking what to do when people fight with them when they try to feed strays.
Okay. So first of all, you know, when people fight, there's a reason they're fighting. Put yourself in their shoes. I have so often seen that people fight, and then when I say, oh, you don't like dogs, do you? They wake you up at night. What is it that bothers you about these dogs? Oh, they chase you on their motorbike. I say, yeah, that's terrible. But you know what? If I feed them, I can get them sterilized, and in a few years, we won't have any dogs anymore. And I think love works better than hate. When I say that, you win them over. They'll stop troubling you. And be confident. Be confident. Say, you know what? I think compassion is something we need for everyone, not just human beings. And I like to do something kind for animals. I think when you change your attitude and don't, when they get angry and you respond by, or react rather, you react and become angry with them, it starts a vicious cycle. The minute they fight with you, you stop and say, okay, why is it that they're fighting with me? Ask them, what is it that bothers you? And then understand and say, yes, I understand. Some people, they see my dog and they'll run away. And I say, oh, something must have happened when you were a child that you're so scared of dogs. And they say, yes. I tell them, don't worry, I'll hold him. He won't do anything to you. I'll walk on the other side. They just calm down. We need to understand other people's fears. We need to understand other people's hatred. I'm not saying everybody will, be won over, but most will. If there's somebody who's just cruel and just enjoys hurting animals or hurting dogs, you can't do anything about it. But I would say also do not feed where there are too many people. So what you're doing is right, feeding in the middle of the night where there aren't too many people. But don't be scared, because you're doing something really kind and compassionate. And we want to help others, be part of this movement of being compassionate and kind to animals. So don't be afraid. And of course, you have the what is it? The order from the AWBI, which says that you have every right to feed them. Like I lived in a society, and the person, he drove up in his car and he said, you know what, this is a pet-free family, pet-free society. And I was like, oh, that's really sad. Why are you depriving the children of compassion, of connecting with animals? And then I said, but I'm an animal rights activist. Make sure you tell them that you're an animal rights activist. And I tell them that no law, no bylaw can supersede the Supreme Court order. They cannot make orders which are above the Supreme Court order. And these orders are important, which allow you to feed and be compassionate. And well done, Ananya. You're just 13. Admirable. I wish I was like you when I was 13. What to do if they kill animals if we feed them? Oh my God. So this is something you need to document. You need to connect with animal rights people in your community. You need to become a strong group and make sure you sterilize all of them. Feeding is not enough. You need to sterilize them. Make sure that the PMC, you need to work with the municipal corporation of whatever city you're in to start sterilization, because it is their duty. But I don't think they are capable of doing it on their own. So you need to participate and work together with the corporation to get sterilization done. You can work with the other shelters that are in your area. Things like, build groups. So when I first moved here, where I live right now, there were about 15 female dogs, all going to become pregnant very soon, and none of them were sterilized. I immediately formed a group of people. When I saw somebody feeding, I said, what's your number? Let me add you. I'm going to make a group. I immediately made a group and I got them sterilized myself. Find out who does the sterilization, who comes and catches. Make sure if you have funds, you know how to raise funds. There's a lot you can do. Yeah.
Thank you, Darshana. I'm sure Ananya has a whole bunch of questions more for you. I think you can mentor her after this.
Definitely. Sure. I'll be very happy to.
I think Dr. Sudharma has a question. Dr. Sudharma? You can unmute and ask your question.
And I'll be very happy to, talk to anybody if you need help. My number is 8999 5889. 8999 5889. so you can connect with me. Absolutely, I agree. Love and power to Ananya. Pandru, come here. See, Pandru always charges at my cat. Now, if I scold him, he's going to get even more agitated. What do? I say, Pandru, come here. Come here, good boy. And he stops. And he comes to me. So that's what we need to do with people as well.
Yes.
Darshana, can you tell us what you're up to these days? Like, what are the activities that you're doing?
Okay. So,
And I think that is the last question.
Yeah, so I'm the campaign manager for India for $1 Million Vegan. And I manage the social media. I post a lot of articles. Please read, most of them are relevant to India. So please read the articles on the Facebook page of $1 Million Vegan India, $1 Million Vegan India. And we do food giveaways. So we do vegan food giveaways. We've done food giveaways during the lockdown here in my area. Then we did a food giveaway with Mallika Sherawat, and we did a food giveaway with Rakul Preet in Dharavi, Mallika Sherawat in Kamathipura, and we did a food giveaway with Shilpa Shetty in Raigad, where they were affected by the cyclone. This month we are going to do a food giveaway in Pune. So basically, we do all this kind of work where we are reaching out to people and giving away food. We gave dry rations. We've given biryanis, masoor biryani. We've given peanut laddus. And this month we are giving food that is made out of millets to midday school children to tell them you can have this instead of milk and eggs because you get all the nutrition. Power packed. Millets are power packed. So different kinds of food giveaways, and basically we try and reach out to people through social media. Do like our page on both Instagram and Facebook. $1 Million Vegan India.
Yeah, thank you very much, Darshana. That was awesome. You are doing such a wonderful service to everyone, and you are also inspiring so many people. And for all the participants, I would like to say that we will be sharing the recording of today's session. So we will be sharing in our all the WhatsApp group that we have. And it was really wonderful, Darshana. I think all the people who are here today are going back with a different mindset. They have gained so much from you, how in a very nice way we can communicate and put forward our ideas without hurting anyone. The first point of communication is not to make other person uncomfortable about themselves, and then start talking of whatever we want, be it animal liberation or anything in life. So thank you very much, Darshana, for joining us, and we would like to have you quite often for our session many more times, and hope you get back normal. You have a speedy recovery, and so for next Saturday we have another very wonderful personality, a maverick personality, we would say. It's Anand Siva. I think many people who are like here in this session today who are vegan, they already know him, and he is a very, very very inspirational personality. He has kids. His whole family is vegan, and his kids are into vegan entrepreneurship. And the next session that is going to take is the case of an obese giraffe. That is the session that is going to happen on next Saturday. So please join us, and we will have another wonderful, interesting session with a lot of takeaways. So thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have any more queries, you want to know more about Darshana's activities, you want to join her, you want to any other queries related to veganism, lifestyle, health benefits, animal liberation, please join us on our WhatsApp group, Ulvili's WhatsApp group, and we also have a Facebook group. Please join us, and we would help you, support you there. And thank you for joining us tonight, and have a wonderful weekend. Good night, all of you. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful, really wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me this
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you, Darshana.
Thank you, and bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Good night, Darshana. Get well soon.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.